I can't believe we're not allowed to be adults about this, but yes, Aptera can go uphill. It's very quickly becoming an annoying trend, I guess, for anybody who wants to dog on the company to say that, oh, it had this one failed demo for some NBC reporter, and therefore the entire product is fundamentally flawed. They suddenly threw out all their old arguments, trying to claim that it's a niche market, even though they've got way more reservations than any other electric vehicle startup right now. There's a ton of demand for people that want electric vehicles that are unable to charge them from home, people that want lower cost of ownership, people that want 11,000 miles of free charging per year. There's a ton of demand for these things, so that argument didn't work. So now they're resorting to, oh, we found some 2 seconds in an NBC article that made it look like the Aptera is incapable of going uphill. So let me explain things a little bit for those of you who may not be aware of the criticisms going around. So Aptera is in a state of funding dependency, which means they're working on their supply chain, they're signing contracts, and simultaneously looking for investors to get production started. They're applying for federal grants, they're looking for crowdfunding, and they've had a lot of success, to be fair. They've exceeded the expectations of their accelerator program with over $20 million raised, and they just got like an $80 million tax credit for equipment that they buy for their factory, and they're waiting to hear back from the federal government on the ATVM loan, which should fully fund their path towards production, as they've claimed in the past. And before you say, oh no, they're running out of money, Tesla was in this exact same situation, burning through cash, struggling to find investors, and relying on the federal government to bail them out. And if it weren't for that federal government loan at that right time, Tesla definitely wouldn't exist today. So please don't act like Aptera is doing anything that Tesla wouldn't have done in their exact situation. But because they're in that state of looking for investment and they're waiting for the ATVM loan, they're still on kind of a marketing frenzy right now, where they're trying to promote it, beat with YouTubers, collab with people as much as possible so they can get the word out about their product and their brand. And it's working, by the way. We're getting tons of YouTube channels interviewing them, talking about some really exciting updates to the pack design, how Sandy Monroe is working with them to make their design more manufacturable. And even my good friend Mike from the Tailosive EV podcast just recently got to check out their Gamma prototype in person, and he did a great video on it over on our EV podcast channel. So please feel free to check it out if you want his thoughts. But during this marketing media frenzy, where they're just taking Gamma in as many places as they can at Tesla Takeover and Comic-Con to get more and more people talking about them, one of those little interviews was with NBC, and NBC was checking out a specific Aptera prototype that is primarily designed to showcase the interior and the exterior in a more production complete way. But it should be noted, the Gamma prototype is not production ready. It is not the same thing as the Delta prototype, which at this stage is still just in the render phase. And in interviews that we've gathered, Chris Anthony has mentioned that they plan on having a Delta, as in production grade Aptera, with all of the production ready parts, using the same design, supply chains, and manufacturing techniques as the production model by the end of this year. That's not out yet, but yes, NBC got to check out the Gamma prototype, which is not the same as their Beta prototype. So the Beta prototype had a much bigger emphasis on the powertrain, the battery pack, the thermals, and that's kind of their workhorse. That's the one they've tested launch modes on, they've done hard braking tests on, and they've done swerving tests to see how hard they can turn it back and forth and make sure it doesn't flip and make sure it stays stable. It has, by the way. In testing, it's been doing very, very well. But because NBC had the Gamma prototype, they were driving it around on an incredibly hot day, record high for San Diego, and they were taking it uphill, and the powertrain overheated primarily because, thanks to Aptera Owners Club for asking Aptera directly for a statement on this, and the statement was essentially that the powertrain does not have the coolant tubes hooked up to the powertrain for this specific model. And if you're wondering, well, why didn't they hook up the coolant tubes in the Gamma prototype? Again, this is a small startup company, and all of the money that they're getting invested, they're trying to put towards production. They are not obsessed with their prototypes being flawless. Does it remind you of anybody else out there? Oh my god. And by the way, that's not just an Elon or an EV startup company thing. I feel like the only adult in a room when people start just clinging on to bad demos. It's like that happens with all kinds of prototype hardware all the time, even with giant companies like Apple unveiling AirPower and claiming nobody else can make this work, and then they end up scrapping it and decided, oh, wait a minute, we actually don't know how to make this work. And even the very first time Apple demoed Face ID on the iPhone 10, Craig Federighi went up to it and you just swipe up and you know, oh, let's go to backup here. A biometric that I'm positive like 80% of you guys watching this are probably using. And even if you haven't used it, you should know that Face ID on the iPhone is used by by millions of people around the world every single day. It's reliable, it's consistent, people are happy with it. Most people prefer it to Touch ID, but it had a botched demo, okay? That happens when you're trying out new technology and you haven't quite figured out how to demonstrate it perfectly. But this Gamma prototype, again, is really just meant to be the show pony. It's meant to look cool, it's meant to catch eyes. Again, get investors more sold on the idea of a solar-powered future through a solar-powered vehicle, which is an amazing concept. And because the team was so focused on getting the interior, you know, comfortable and the visibility right, and they were so focused on panel gaps and making the exterior clean and nice, there wasn't as much of a focus on the powertrain with this particular prototype because it's hand-built, right? Like, they're probably not using production-grade parts in this prototype. It's just meant to be a proof of concept. And when NBC was checking out the vehicle, they ran into a limitation of the prototype. It was only on screen for a couple of seconds, but that was enough for all of the Aptera haters out there to cling onto and say, oh my god, the Aptera is incapable of going up a hill. Like, you really think all of these engineers that have worked on other vehicles and worked at other automotive companies in the past, we're talking about Aptera's director who came from General Atomics, specializing in military contracts, and Chris Anthony, who worked on Flux Power with electric forklifts, which are being used all day for hours and hours and hours. Like, these guys, they know what they're doing, okay? They know the difference between a prototype that is meant to demonstrate the beauty of the design and how to make it catch eyes, and then they know how to build a test mule like the Beta Aptera, which is clearly not meant for aesthetics, but meant for testing the braking, the suspension, the battery pack, the cooling, and that was a separate prototype. And because this company is so focused on efficiency and they don't want to burn through all their cash while they're trying to raise enough money to start production, yeah, they cut a few corners on this one particular prototype. Like, I'm sure the Gamma prototype doesn't necessarily have CarPlay either, even though, yes, they did intend on adding CarPlay by the time the launch model comes around. So if you're gonna complain about Aptera and like, this is all you can come up with, is like, oh, well, that one prototype struggled to go up a hill one time. Like, seriously, you're not helping the situation, okay? Even if you're not interested in the product itself, okay? I get it. Like, some of you guys love your big fat F-150s and you want to drive around with 4 empty seats all the time in your car. That's fine, okay? I understand the Aptera is not for everybody. That's fine, okay? You don't have to buy it. But to go out of your way and try to discourage, try to verbally attack and go after somebody that is so passionate and so focused on trying to reduce emissions and trying to make the electrification process easier for everybody, not just by relying on, oh, well, Model 3 cheaper because federal tax credit, even though you don't really get that credit right away. You gotta wait for your next year's federal taxes to return and then you can write off the $7,500. No, instead of that, what if we were saying, okay, what if you didn't have to install an EV charger at your garage or at your house because maybe you live in an apartment or something? What if your car was just constantly charging itself? And what if there's some people out there that for commuting or just driving around town, they don't need to sit 3, 4, 5 people in their car? It's usually just them and maybe one other person. They want to have more storage space than a sedan does because the Aptera can do 32 cubic feet. It can charge itself just by being left in the sun, and even without solar, even if it was a completely dark and very cloudy day, you're still getting 100 watt hours per mile. That's less than half of what most Model 3s are consuming. This is an amazing idea that a ton of people, like over 40,000 people, have put reservations down on, and you're trying to talk down to them. You're trying to complain and say, oh, their prototypes are not flawless, or it's taking longer than they should have. Look, like Faraday Future, who we thought died like several times, actually ended up delivering a car. Sure, it's like $300,000, and that doesn't really say much about the success or the future of the company, but here's a startup company over here that's trying to stand up for the little guy, someone who cares about their carbon footprint regardless of if their vehicle is gas or electric. And instead of having all of these startups that are so focused on, yeah, let's make a $90,000 car. You know what the EV revolution needs? It needs a $300,000 luxury SUV. You seriously want like 80 different startup companies all making their own take on an SUV? All right, maybe you love SUVs. Okay, be all for it and applaud these startups that are about to go bankrupt because they threw themselves into production too quickly for the sake of, well, people want us to deliver a car, so there you go. We delivered one car. We're a real company now. Instead, you got a company like Aptera working with industry experts like Sandy Monroe. They have less money to work with than any of these other companies. They don't have the Saudis to pull from like Lucid does. They don't have a non-stop Amazon money train like Rivian does. They don't got PayPal money like Tesla did back in the old days. They're just really passionate about making a sustainable, practical vehicle that there's clearly tens upon thousands of reservations for, capable of going up to 1,000 miles on a single charge for those hypermilers. And you're trying to slow them down? You're trying to discourage people? You're trying to make them sound sound stupid or incompetent, as if you could do something better, like you could make a vehicle cooler looking than this or have specs better than this. No, I guarantee all the people out there that are trash talking Aptera are the same people that were like, well, if I was designing a car, I would basically just make a Model Y, I guess, but it would be more luxurious. Wow, very creative, very original. No, these people are genius. These people know what they're doing, and it's just a matter of trying to convince enough people to invest in the company to get production started. They've got the demand, they've got the design, they've got the supply chains, and no, it's not happening as fast as they would like, and it's definitely not happening as fast as I would like, but good things take time, okay? There's definitely companies like Lordstown that were so focused with all of you critics out there, that were so obsessed with all of the comments saying, well, it's not a real company because they haven't delivered anything, that they rushed too quickly into production and it killed them. That's what made them go bankrupt. There is a wrong way to start delivering products, and I guess I'm just so sick of all of the people complaining about one slight prototype issue, and now I'm seeing that show up all over the comments section, and it just drives me nuts when there's a team of people working really, really hard to try to make a very sustainable product and try to target a more affordable demographic. You know, it's probably the first startup I've seen that's like, our first vehicle is going to be about $30,000. Everybody else is like, well, we're going to start with a $80,000 trim and then maybe work our way down. And not only are they having a 400-mile range with $30,000 starting price, but because you're getting 11,000 miles of free charging per year, this undercuts all kinds of other EVs simply because of how cheap it is to own. Even if you got to replace all the tires, it's cheaper than everybody else. Insurance will be cheaper because it's an auto cycle. Charging will be cheaper because it's from the sun, and you don't have to install a home charger. There's just so many advantages to this design, and sure, it may not make sense for you. You may not want it, but please just focus more on positivity. Maybe go praise and applaud the company that fits your needs best. Maybe you really love the Hummer EV or something because you're stupid. Maybe just go praise GM all the time and just applaud GM for all the stupid decisions they're making. But if you're clicking on Aptera content, you're trying to engage in a community of people passionate about a more sustainable future, then like try to be a bit more productive than just complain about one botched demo, which literally has never had a massive impact on future product launches. Cybertruck is going to be a huge success despite the fact that the demo for it sucked, as was the iPhone X, which had a botched Face ID demo, and even Apple recovered from their AirPower mistakes. So please shut up with the whole can Aptera make it up a hill thing, because it's just not productive and it's pushing against what I think is the most humble, honest EV startup right now. I've never seen another EV startup like this be so willing to talk to literally anybody. Like, if you have questions or concerns about the hardware, you're like, I don't know if this is safe or not. It is, by the way, but even if you have more specific questions, I've never seen someone have a better chance of getting an answer straight from the company itself. Verde Future, Lucid, Fisker, none of these guys have as clear a communication protocol with their audience as well as Aptera does. So don't kick the little guy, is I guess what I'm trying to say. You know, bash Tesla like I do. You can bash the big guys that are clearly never going away, but these are startups trying to do something really, really genuine. So keep those negative comments in your head, please. In the words of the bunny from Bambi, if you can't say something nice, don't say nothing at all. And thank you to everybody supporting this channel directly. It seriously helps us out a ton, as does just watching these videos. So thanks again, and have an excellent rest of your day.